Picture this. You're playing TF2, shooting people, trying to hold back your intrusive thoughts when you think, wow, I really wish there was a useless menu I could look at. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I might have a solution. Look no further than the engineer's PDA loadout menu. Why? Explain to me, why exactly is it like this? Why does one item make this a make or break situation? Most people don't even have a strange PDA, so this is just an empty menu with one item in it. Why can't there just be more PDAs to choose from? Jesus Christ, if only there was a way I could address this whole situation to the world, that would be great. Oh my god. Now before I get into anything, just hear me out, just a little bit, just for 1 second, okay? Why exactly does a strange PDO exist? Koshy wrenches are a thing and they keep track of sentry kills anyway, so why can't strange wrenches also track sentry kills? I mean, this seems kind of backward and overconvoluted. Anyway, engineers should need class, right? But the fact that it has only one PDA and only one list of buildings to actually look through, kind of sad. I mean, considering we have many sentries in the game, there was obviously more room to expand, especially if you equip the Texas Tech handset and you have even more room. There we go, another addition to the list of jokes that'll get me cancelled. Well, anyway, I decided to write down some ideas that I have for engineer PDAs that I think would be pretty cool additions to the game. Now keep in mind, I don't really have a way to design these weapons. I don't have the skills to put them in the game, or at least make a concept for them, so yeah, screw me, right? But I'll do my best to explain these in the best light that I can in terms of stats and things like that. And before you say anything, yes, I'm also aware that people have listed their own ideas for the engineer weapons like this, sort of like that artillery sentry thing that someone made, or the Geiger counter redesign that Great Blue came up with, but I'm gonna try and come up with my own original stuff. Starting off, I want to kind of bring up the Handy Buddy, which was a cancelled PDA item that almost made it into the game but wasn't. What the heck, Valve? But pretty much this allowed you to make mini dispensers which were cheaper but had a limit on how much ammo you would actually get back. I like this idea, so I kind of want to expand on it a little bit. So the idea that I actually came up with is that you could place two mini dispensers, both cheaper and smaller, functioning the same way as how they were intended to, but to make things a little bit more interesting, I wanted to have them be able to heal players at a level 2 dispensers rate, so that it doesn't just feel like a throwaway item. With mini teleporters, they would only be allowed to function within a certain range of each other, so no cross-map teleporting. And while this may seem like a con, I thought balancing out with a faster spin-up would be a good idea. With this, you wouldn't have to stand there for like 5 seconds trying to wait for that counter to go up to 100, you'd only have to wait like a second and a half. And then all you do is step on it and you're back into battle. Easy stuff. But of course, mini buildings, as small as they obviously have less health and are a #1 spot for demo men and soldiers. We've all had that painful moment where your mini sentry dies before it can even do anything, so I think it's fair to give the mini dispenser and the mini teleporter sort of explosion resistance buff, so that it doesn't die in one simple hit. Of course, for fair and balanced reasons, the sentry would stay the same as usual. So if you have any other wrench besides the gunslinger, your sentry is just a normal sentry. But I really do like the idea of an NG subclass focused only on mini buildings. But on the other end of the page, we have basic balancing. If you have one set that has weaker things, you should have another set that focuses on stronger things. I thought hard about what I could possibly name this PDA, and the best I could come up with is the Big Iron. I know it's corny, but the machines would be big and they would be metal. See, it all checks out and it works.
Don't complain about it.
The machines would be expensive, running out to 200 metal each, and the teleporters costing 150 for consistency reasons. But I figure you should be allowed to hold more metal with this equipped. So 300 to be exact, and 300 metal to upgrade. The Big Iron level 1 sentry would look like a standard level 1 sentry, but have a second barrel. The level 2 would have the standard Gatling gun style, but have a single rocket launcher attached to it, and level 3 would have 3 Gatling gun thingies, and would have an anti-projectile system. But for the sake of balancing, that would take longer to build, fire slower, and have more power in each shot. The anti-projectile system would also only focus on one group of projectiles at a time, a demo man firing consecutive grenades at it, for example. So it would require multiple projectiles to be going at it at the same time, possibly in different directions in order for it to actually be taken down. But I also want to make it turn slower so that it's not a complete counter to Demo Man entirely. Now you're probably wondering why I'm bringing up sentry changes for this PDA and not the Handy Buddy. Simply put, I'm making changes for this one because it'll make it way too easy to level up, because none of the stats would change. But it changes sentries in order to make it so that the engineers can't immediately make super powerful sentries right off the bat. But let's design a Big Iron mini sentry just for fun. Standard level 1 sentry with a mini sentry design. The end. Onto the Big Iron dispenser. I did have a little bit of trouble coming up with this, I will admit. I'm not super smart when it comes to this kind of stuff, but we may have an idea. So the question here is, what can a bigger dispenser do without making it completely unbalanced? I want to give some sort of buff, but not make it super campy. With all the ideas that I came up with, I think the best idea is that a dispenser that can build Uber, but not overheal players. The dispenser would only build Uber if a player is injured, albeit at a stunted rate, based on level, sort of like minus 75% build rate at level 1, minus 40% build rate at level 2, standard build rate at level 3. But once the player's health is full, the Uber starts to go back down to 0%. And what could work is that an injured medic could go to the dispenser and collect the Uber as he heals from it, but it would stop giving Uber once his health is full. Well, like I said, it was hard to find a way to keep it balanced, but I think this is the best I'm gonna get for the time being. But if you have any changes you would make, put them down in the comments and I will rate them myself. Now, the Big Iron Teleporter is just an easy and cool idea. Make it bigger, slower spin up speed, but it can teleport up to 3 players at the same time. See? Easy and cool. And to balance the PDA out even more, the buildings would build up 50% slower and it would take more hits to remove sappers. Overall, I think the idea isn't that bad. I'm not sure how balanced it really is, but for what it is, it at least sets up a base for what could be. And now for the last PDA. This PDA was practically the whole reason I actually made this video, but I'll admit this one was really hard to think through, so please excuse my shaky concept. So what I've come up with is a PDA that would focus around changing its function based on your loadout. I call it the Mod Pod. The Mod Pod works best if you're switching things up, like a romantic relationship. This PDA only focuses on the Sentry though, because having a teleport that just changes how it works based on the Rescue Ranger does not make sense at all. Anyway, using the reload button would allow you to change Sentry modifications and change how it works. This would cycle between your primary and your melee, considering a modification based on the Wrangler does not make sense at all. I was debating whether or not stock weapons should modify how this Sentry works, but I feel like the wrench should be the only thing that allows for a more vanilla experience. Let's break away from the primaries first, the stock shotgun. With the shotgun, the Sentry would become less accurate at long range due to using pellets, but that would mean it could technically damage multiple targets who are grouped up. It would fire slower, but I think that's less scary than constant shotgun blasts. But up close, it would shred through health, basically deleting light and medium classes under 200 health. So if you were to come across this thing, try and say your prayers within a second and a half. Let's hope you can talk that fast, because I can talk fast, but can you talk fast? I bet you can't. Next up is the Frontier Justice mod, which is a little bit more interesting. It would have less ammo for the while that the mod is actually active, but it gets its own revenge crits based on kills and assists that the player gets on their own. So for every kill or every 2 assists that the engineer gets on their own, it adds 1 revenge crit for the Sentry to use. The question after that is, how do I activate those revenge crits? My solution is, the Sentry's revenge crits activate either when the player dies, or when the player uses the health and ammo locker. The use of 1 revenge crit would equal the Sentry's attempt to kill an enemy player. But for the sake of balancing, the Sentry could only hold up to 5 revenge crits, considering it's buffier and stronger than the actual engineer. But let's also consider the battery on the side of the FJ, Frontier Justice. Suppose you die before you use all of your revenge crits. The revenge crits would transfer over to the Sentry, again to a limit of 5, and the Sentry would use them as revenge! And now for the Widowmaker mod. I really had to think about this one for a little bit. I could give it infinite ammo as long as it can land a shot, but let's be honest, that's kind of useless considering it has basically 100% accuracy and a lot of ammo as is, so we have to think about this. Okay, here's the game plan. The Widowmaker uses metal as ammo. Now that sounds normal, but what I'm thinking is that it will refill your metal reserves with each shot at the cost of health. The Sentry's health wouldn't go down that fast, as in it would take 20 straight seconds of non-stop firing for it to destroy itself, no matter what level it is. But of course, it would also get an absolutely mind-boggling and game-breaking 10% damage boost, which I'll tell you, that was a lot harder to figure out than I want to admit. And now moving on to the Thompson mod of all things. With the Thompson mod, the Sentry would violently explode, crash your game, shame you, delete System 32, and then you would have the authorities sent to your home for breaking and entering. No, I'm actually serious. Okay, fine. The Thompson mod fires a beam that explodes when it hits something. It fires 66% slower than a level 1 Sentry on all levels, but it can disable buildings if hit directly by the beam. There, you happy? I made the Thompson good. The Rescue Ranger mod is pretty simple. Simply put, it aims for the nearest friendly buildings and fires at it, healing the building. Of course, it would also use the same projectile as the Rescue Ranger, but what if there are no other friendly buildings? Well, this reason is why we would also still have access to the rocket launcher at level 3. The projectile is slow and not reliable for actual combat, but having a Sentry actually use those sounds like hell. But that's why you can switch between 2 different modes! And last up for the primary mods is the Panic Attack. I don't need to sugarcoat it, it's just a shotgun mod, but it works like the Panic Attack. The Sentry would turn faster to account for the deploy speed that the Panic Attack already has, though it would be weaker at longer ranges. Basically, it's just a shotgun mod, but for the Panic Attack. yeah, now moving on to the melee mods. I would love to bring up a little detail that I think is fun involving the wrench. Like I said before, the wrench mod is just a standard sentry, but I like the thought of turning the target into gold if you use the golden pan, the golden wrench, or the saxy. It would be useless, but I think it's a funny little touch. But anyway, the first melee mod is the gunslinger mod. Now let me first clarify that all the primary mods work for the mini sentry, but it would get a firing speed bonus for all of them in order to balance them out. The gunslinger mod would allow the player to build a second mini sentry, like the MVM upgrade. But to balance out how it will pair with the primary mods, the second mini sentry is only active while the gunslinger mod is selected, because 2 mini sentries working with the Frontier Justice mod is terrifying. The Southern Hospitality mod would lower the firing speed by 25% for level 2 and 50% for level 3 for balance reasons. Each shot would have a 75% chance to cause bleeding for 5 seconds, but the mod would make it take more damage from fire weapons, just to round it out and match the source material. I'm not entirely sure how good this mod is because I couldn't find anything about the sentry's firing speed, so if you have any suggestions about how this one could be better, let me know in the comments. Up next is the Jag mod, which would have a 15% firing speed boost, but have a 25% damage penalty and deal less damage to buildings. The Jag is such a basic weapon that the stats are basically self-explanatory. Nothing really to see here that's really crazy and stuff. And speaking of crazy, the Eureka Effect mod is definitely something like that. And if anything, I wouldn't be surprised if this mod has the potential to change how Engineer can be played overall. The Eureka Effect mod would allow players to teleport the sentry to different places for 50 metal. But every time you teleport it has a fraction of the health and needs to rebuild itself. While the price of teleporting a sentry is quite high, just imagine the strength of getting to quickly move a sentry somewhere in order to quickly prepare for an incoming attack. Oh yeah, and the bullets are replaced with a laser that destroys projectiles, deals burning damage, but deals 20% damage to buildings, and 75% damage to players. The sentry also has a 50% turning speed boost. And that's it for the mod pod. Overall, I'm quite proud of these ideas, even though they might be not perfect, they might be a little bit unbalanced, but honestly I would love to see something like these get added to the game. I think they would honestly shake up the game and Engineer a lot. But like I said, if you have any changes or suggestions about how I could change these and make them more balanced, please do hit me up in the comments. With that, I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day.